feet.
Hardcore football. A 9 to noon radio in the air. Second part of the radio show. The winningest quarterback in the history of Golden Gophers football, Tanner Morgan, in studio 9 to noon, about 10-15 minutes from now. After News du Nord, some Soldier Field skull stories. Down memory lane we go. That'll be in the final hour. But now we're happy to be joined by ESPN NFL Nation Bears reporter and Courtney Cronin joins us now. Beloved CC, how have you been?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Excellent. Things are well, and look forward to seeing you this weekend. Now, somebody you and I both know quite well, Sylvie from the super popular Chicago Drive Time radio show, Waddle and Sylvie. Now, he starts the radio show tomorrow, 9 to noon at 9 o'clock. And he's all wound up and loud about these Chicago Bears right now. I mean, it makes you giggle. It makes that swing bit on social media. And I don't listen to the show often, being out of market, but I know you're on it quite frequently. I mean, my man Sylvie is all wound up right now, isn't he?
Yeah, he has this thing he does where if they lose, he has this swing set in his backyard. It's like this tire, and it's called the Swing of Sadness. And for a minute during that 3-game winning streak, he actually deconstructed it. I'm guessing that he didn't throw the tire away because it made its way back during the 3-game losing streak. And now that streak extending to 4, Sylvie's in a pretty dark spot right now. So make sure that don't hit him with any body blows tomorrow. Just go a little easy on him. He's in a dark place.
Courtney, at Courtney R. Cronin. Yes, that Courtney Cronin you see on TV, the one who used to cover the Vikings for ESPN and ESPN.com with ESPN NFL Nation as the Bears reporter now. Do you think they'll give Jefferson to Jalen Johnson like big bank on big bank one-on-one?
Well, I know that a lot of quarterbacks have not targeted Jalen Johnson much this season. It's usually an exercise in futility, just given how good he is in coverage. And they don't shadow. Like, it's just something that they do. They play sides, and Jalen Johnson is kind of, sometimes that matchup will be Terry McLaurin. Other times it'll be the team's top receiver when they're over there. But you don't hear much about him this year just because teams are not throwing his way. So if the Vikings put Justin Jefferson on Jalen Johnson, that would be the matchup I'd circle. That'd be the one that you want to watch, the best of the best, the receiver position versus the best cornerback right now in the NFL. But I don't know how frequently you'll see that, given they do a pretty good job playing left and right, and he stays on his side for the most part.
Outside of the L, when he was yelling at fans at FedEx and then ran over and messed up the Hail Mary to Noah Brown, the second year Kane, Tyreek Stevenson is again outside of what everybody has seen, which is of the L variety. Is he a pretty good corner?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm actually working on the story right now about being the other corner, the number 2, the boundary corner for all intents and purposes. And he has had one of the better seasons outside of the moment that is going to just kind of, it's what he's going to be remembered for. You hope that he can turn his career around to a point where people forget about that Hail Mary down the line. But outside of that, he's been really good. And does he run a little hot? Yeah, we saw it in Indianapolis. We saw it certainly in the Washington game when Terry McLaurin was really effective at getting under his skin. But by and large, the pass defense this year in the secondary, that's been their strongest unit. That's where they are most, where the most talent is. Veteran group back there. They add Kevin Byard in place of Eddie Jackson. Of course, there's the Jaquan Brisker injury and him going to IR, probably done for the season. But, your corners, whether it's Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson, Kyler Gordon at the nickel, that's been a unit that you'd probably put up against anybody. And for Stevenson to have such a good start, first 6 games of the season, and then, what happened in Washington to deal with the quasi-benching, if you even want to call it that, in Arizona. I think he's he's remained a little bit off the grid just to try to, stay, keep his head down and focus on his job so he doesn't end up in one of those moments again. But, for where the Bears drafted him and the return on investment that they got outside of that moment, I think they'd be you'd be hard pressed to say that they aren't happy about his play. But of course, that's the moment that kind of sparked this 4-game losing streak that they're on. And you can pinpoint it back to one player being completely not locked in, allowing that to happen.
Now, at ESPN.com on the Bears page, Courtney Cronin wrote about the difficulties rookie quarterbacks can have with in-season coordinator changes. For those who missed it, what did you dig up with that one?
Well, it's difficult to say that, like, you switch coordinators and everything is great. I mean, we saw it in Buffalo last year when they go from Ken Dorsey to Joe Brady. They're a playoff team. Josh Allen cuts down on the turnovers the second half of the season. The run game becomes the best in the NFL among playoff teams. So that's a positive example of it. But then there's the Daniel Jones example, and it's relevant because he just got benched this week, where the amount of turnover, trying to get it right by switching coordinators, switching head coaches, personnel coming in and out. Carolina's another example in 2021, one that Sam Darnold knows well because he was part of that switch. When they went back to him after he didn't play for 5 games, and that's when they went to Cam Newton. Like, other times it just doesn't manifest itself in anything, and a coordinator switch sometimes is just putting a Band-Aid over an off-season problem. But what the Bears are hoping right now is that what you saw on Sunday, Caleb Williams getting back on the right track, that can be a lasting part of his rookie trajectory, that you didn't waste his rookie season because you didn't get it done in the first 9. You didn't at least take his development where it needed to go in the first 9 games under Shane Waldron. Now, small sample size, but the way that he played against the Green Bay Packers, so a lot of that was scheme. He was getting the ball out in under 3 seconds. That's Thomas Brown trying to beat the blitz, which Caleb has been very effective at this season. That's him getting the ball to his playmakers. I mean, there's been games, Paul, that Cole Kmet is an afterthought under Shane Waldron. That
right.
DJ Moore is a king of bad body language because he's frustrated, and you can't blame guys for that. But that was truly the theme of the first half of the season here, that the Bears hope can turn around. That even if this is a lost season for Chicago, if they do make a coaching switch in the offseason, that you're not completely starting over next year with Caleb Williams' development, because then it becomes the case of, is this Mitchell Trubisky? Is this Justin Fields all over again, which they've tried to avoid. And up until this point, it hasn't looked great. But if they can salvage this the second half of the season with a new coordinator who is better utilizing personnel and better putting his quarterback in a better position to succeed, then that's a win for them in what's felt like a lost season to this point.
I'm glad you said that about DJ Moore.
CC.
Because getting caught up on the Bears, and I watched all of Caleb's passes from the last game, and specifically late when he missed Keenan Allen on what would have been a 54-yard touchdown. If he just had waited another second right side of the field between the hash marks and the numbers, there goes Keenan. All right. Well, Keenan, I mean, you would think the world was ending. And I've seen it multiple times from him of late, but DJ Moore during the season. So Keenan Allen and DJ Moore's body language sometimes can be demonstratively frustrating if they just show the frustration. Does that bug fans or players or coaches?
Well, it certainly bugs fans, because this was a thing that started week 2 in Houston, when they're mounting a comeback at the end of the game. I believe they lost that one 19-13. It was a close game, and Houston's offense, like, you could start figuring it out that this is an offense that's taken a step back from where they were last year, making the playoffs. But there was a moment where they showed DJ on the sideline, and he's appearing to say something to Tyson Bagent's backup quarterback, like something along the lines of, "I need you out there." Now, then they show him on the bench, like, his face, and I mean this in like the nicest way possible, he has RBF, which I can't say on the radio, but it's what I have. It's what most people have when your face is just blank and you look angry, but you're not necessarily. That's who he is. So he had to justify, look, that's just how I am when I'm upset that we're losing. But then it continued to happen. And that's when it's like there's something there, where there's smoke, there's fire. And obviously, there's been a connection issue between somebody who is a perennial 1,000-yard receiver and a rookie quarterback. Like, if you ask Sam Darnold about it, because he played with DJ Moore in Carolina during that 2021 season where DJ had, I think it was his third of 4 1,000-yard seasons. Like, it doesn't matter. It should not matter in theory who the quarterback is, because he had 11 different quarterbacks in Carolina throwing him the ball, and he was still able to get, put up numbers. So you think, okay, upgrading quarterback in Chicago, rookie quarterback at that, but they had the whole off season to work through this, that it would translate to the field really. And he's had one really good game, and that was against Carolina in week 5, and he's been quiet ever since then. And that's, for someone, if you try to justify it or see at least where he's coming from, he just signed a big deal to, finish out his career in Chicago. He's 27, 28 years old. Like, that should be the last deal that he gets, maybe one more. But it's just production that he's not used to. And the same thing with Keenan Allen. And Rome Odunze is probably, he's a leading receiver on the team right now. He's had a little bit more success with the connection on some of those deep balls with Caleb Williams. But these guys are competitors, and you can understand why they're upset. But also, when I was talking with Chris Beatty, the wide receivers coach, it's kind of like, come on, guys, you got to nip that in the bud. Like, just, don't wear your heart on your sleeve as much, because that's going to screw up your quarterback. That's not going to make him feel very confident if the timing is off on things. If he's throwing right behind somebody, which he did early in the first half, in the first quarter last week against Green Bay, as good as Caleb was last week, he's still off target on a lot of these deeper throws, which is why they're scheming some of the shorter passes, the screens, the quick outs, all of those things to get him in a rhythm. The next step for him is going to be, how do you establish the intermediate to deep passing attack with DJ Moore, the guy that, from the very beginning you thought would be the security blanket for a quarterback, and it just hasn't been that way so far. And, he and DJ have talked about it at length, about how, it's just not there, and they keep trying to talk through it. I don't know how many meetings this team has called, how many frustrations they've voiced publicly about the coaching staff, about the way these games are going. But to this point, it hasn't come to fruition in actually fixing the problem. So we'll see. We'll see if it gets there. I mean, they started to take a step there last week, but by and large, it's still an issue.
Time for 2 more.
Does Caleb Williams have to get outside to be an overall threat, or is he poised and good in the pocket too?
No, he is. He is. I think that what you saw in the fourth quarter, when he got them into field goal range on the 3rd and 19 and then the 4th and 3, when he can get out of the pocket, he's very dangerous. The off-platform throws to Rome Odunze, where that's true quarterbacking.
Yeah.
But he can step up in the pocket too. I mean, there were times earlier this season where you saw it against Jacksonville, against Carolina. Now, of course, you're taking into account how bad those defenses are, but when he had Shane Waldron as his offensive coordinator, he was going through 4 progressions a lot of times. And if it's not there, then moving on to try to get out of the pocket and make something happen. He's a pass-first quarterback, which you want, but you also have to find the balance between hanging in there too long, because you're going to get sacked. And the more you get sacked, the more vulnerable you become in seeing ghosts downfield and trying to avoid hits. And that's what they want to avoid with him. But if it's drawn up for him, where, receivers are actually getting open and not just, some of the routes and some of the, the route concepts were, I think, a problem the first 9 weeks of the season. But he can win from the pocket. It's just that you also want to find the balance of letting this kid tap into his God-given athleticism, to where if something breaks down, if the protection's not there, if somebody's covered, he can still buy you, keep a drive alive and buy you time by scrambling around, getting out of the pocket, and making plays on the move.
Lastly, and we've both seen a lot, and to use the word astonishing, it's not a stretch here, at least for me. It's astonishing, Courtney, from afar. A team can be +9 in the take-give and be having all these issues. It's astonishing. Is that overstated?
I think it's just not complimentary football, where you can have a great defense, and they've struggled as of late. They're really bad against the run. So if Aaron Jones goes off, don't be surprised.
Right.
They lost their starting nose tackle, who has been the force up front, and even then they were still struggling before that. I've asked 1,000 times, so I was blue in the face. I don't know if it's a change in scheme, if it's being coached differently, because this was the number 2 run defense last year, and they've fallen all the way to where they are right now, where They are giving up the big chunk yardage. They are struggling to contain teams on the ground. But, you know, in terms of the takeaways, the turnovers, that's what this defense is based on. Yet, for the first time, the defense wasn't able to hold up its end last week with complimentary football, and certainly the kicking game too. But that's why things feel so disjointed. I think when you take a look at the Bears in 2024, trying to pinpoint, well, where's the problem? You can find problems in all three phases. It's the fact that so rarely on a consistent basis have we seen all three phases line up to where the one drive that you saw where Jordan Love had the turnover at the goal line, and then the Bears come all the way down and march down the field 70 plus yards and cap it off with a touchdown. You haven't seen those moments nearly as much this season as you would think you would for a team that has that many takeaways.
You're spectacular. See you this weekend. Thank you very much for the time.
Take care. I'll see you Sunday.
Yep. See you, Courtney. Courtney Cronin, ESPN, ESPN.com. When 9 to noon continues, down memory lane we go. We're going to go back to November of 2019 with the winningest quarterback in the history of Golden Gophers football. Tanner Morgan joins us to not only preview of this weekend's game against Penn State on KFAN, but down memory lane we go from 5 years ago, and quite the upset. We'll be right back. Here's a give to Ibrahim, turning the corners, got room to midfield and a first down. Stiff arms a man to the 40. What a hard run by the sophomore from Olney, Maryland. Two receivers that way. Coughlin looking like he wants to come. Nope. He's going to drop back. The throw is Clifford. Spinning from one man. Hit near the 2 and dragged down at the 2. Asazia Tomewa with the sack. Morgan looking left. Waits. Now goes back toward Bateman. Near side. He's open. Backpedaling. Has it at the 5. And he's out of bounds at the 3. Spot of the ball, center of the field. In this Green Line Wildcat. Seth Green yelling instructions to the line. 2nd and goal from the 1. Snap to Green. Wants to keep in. Lowers his shoulder. Touchdown. The Green Line has left the station. Green's 5th touchdown of the year. And Minnesota extends the lead to 11. Clifford stands at the 10, waiting for the snap. 3 receivers right, including the tight end Firemouth. He's looking right. Waits. Lost one up for Hamler. It is tipped away. Incomplete. Chris Williamson. Turn the Nittany Lions away. Crowd is going nuts right now. Talking defense here. Sideline going crazy. Quarterback Clifford waits for the snap with Brown next to him on 3rd down and 23. Has time. Waiting. Pressure comes. Firing toward the end zone. Intercepted. Gophers got it. It's picked off by Jordan Howden in the end zone.
How about Jordan Howden? He struggled a little bit earlier in this game, but him to come up there on the ground at the end of that play.
There's the kneel down, and Minnesota has knocked off 5th-ranked Penn State. They're going to get the victory bell. They're 9-0, undefeated, and ready for Iowa City next week. The students are rushing the field. Mike Grimm and Daryl Thompson on the call. That was from November 9th of 2019 at TCF Bank Stadium. The Golden Gophers football team, 13th in the country, into the game. Penn State Nittany Lions, 5th ranked in the country, into the game. And in studio with us now is the winningest quarterback in the history of Gophers football. Dear friend of mine, somebody who went for 339-3 that day. One of the more memorable Golden Gophers football performances in quite some time, along with, like I said yesterday, go back to the Mace days when they went to Happy Valley and beat LeVar Arrington and Courtney Brown, or when Glenn Mason, formerly a coach at Ohio State, went to Columbus and beat Jim Tressel in quite the upset, and a game like this. And when Tanner Morgan, who's in studio with us now, when you hear those highlights, and you're so humble, and you kept your head down, and we caught eyes one time, because you don't. It's hard to explain. I know going down memory lane means something to you. Mm-hmm. I know that was an incredibly special day, but I also know how your mind works to a certain extent, and you want to make sure Howden and Coughlin and Asezio Tomowa and Rashad Bateman and Antoine Winfield Jr. Everybody recognizes that this wasn't just 339-3 here. This was to win this game. It required the village to become as one. Yeah. And that's what happened. And good morning.
Good morning to UPA. It is an honor to be on here, as always. But yeah, dude, I mean, a program-defining win for us as a program for Minnesota. But, I mean, if Jordan Howden doesn't pick it off at the end of the game, we have to go on a 2-minute drive to win it. And obviously, Tyler Johnson had so many great plays, Rashad Bateman, Rodney, and Mo. And then even their current Nichols coach, Mariano Sori-Marin.
Yeah.
Came in and, he was playing, but Thomas Barber, Gopher legend, the Barber family, gets a concussion, and Mariano goes in the last 2 plays and is playing the Mike linebacker after learning from Blake Cashman and company the year before as a freshman. And we go in and Jay Howe makes the pick and the game's over. But it took the village. You're absolutely right.
Now off topic for 1 second, because I don't want to forget. You just mentioned the name Blake Cashman. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I mean, he is I think he was a year ahead of my son at Eden Prairie High School. So I've known Blake a little bit for a long time.
Yeah.
I've known Carter and Bob Coughlin for quite some time.
Yeah.
Bob now even more, and Carter through a Rise with the Guys at Grace Church. And so salt of the earth people. I mean, wonderful people. Blake's a little more quiet, at least with me, than like Carter.
Right.
So, I mean, personalities are different. I had no idea how good Blake Cashman was. He obviously either did the Jets or the Texans. Mm-hmm. He is so important to this Vikings defense. Like when you played with him, he was good and he put up numbers and he was important.
Yeah.
But was he like a heart and soul guy? Could you just tell that immediately?
Yeah. I mean, you could tell when he was a connector, he was always bringing people to the things that he was doing and bringing the locker room together. But when you watched him move, right. I mean, at Eden Prairie High School, he played safety. Yeah. Right. So always very athletic. And so when you watched him move and you're playing against him, he's like, oh, this guy can really move in space. And then on special teams, he was a stud.
Yeah.
So he started his career at the Gophers on special teams, right? Was a walk-on at the University of Minnesota. Didn't get a scholarship, I think, until 2017.
Wow.
Coach Fleck came there. And then 2017, 2018 was an absolute beast.
Undersized, maybe? Or tweener, right?
Yeah, kind of a tweener.
Yeah.
But you see him, I think he got drafted the 5th round of the Jets.
Yeah.
And when you watched him move, you could just see how it translated to the special teams piece of the NFL and then what he's been able to do. And then obviously when he stayed healthy for a year in Houston, that was huge, right? Because he was battling injuries, at the beginning of his career in New York. Stays healthy in Houston, and then it's just the world began to see what Blake Cashman was about, and it's really cool to see him, take off with the Vikings.
Tanner Morgan, by the way, you can follow him via Twitter as 9 to Noon does. It's at T_Morg2, right?
Correct.
T_Morg2. And when I was putting the Covenant catch-up together for that November 9th, 2019 upset of Penn State. And I say upset simply because they were 5th, you were 13th, they were favored, all that kind of stuff.
For sure.
Because I've said that before, and players and coaches have flat looked at me and been like, no, that wasn't an upset. We knew we were going to win.
Right.
And then I'll say okay, well, why? And they'll explain it, and I'll be like, well, that made a lot of sense. I understand. So nevertheless, that victory in November of 2019, you had a quote after the game, man, that was moving to me. And
let's hear it.
And hopefully you can remember it.
Okay.
And why you said it. You said, quote, as an athlete and in life, you should want pressure because that means your life is significant.
Yeah.
Okay. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, for me, here's what it means. Pressure from the outside is something that I earn because I'm doing something significant for other people. I'm providing resources to other people that they need, or it's providing them enjoyment. What you do is significant here on 9 to Noon, right? And so sometimes you can feel pressure of I have to perform, I have to do this, because a lot of people are watching you because what you're doing is significant and it matters. And so I want to live a life where it's significant and I have pressure with what I'm doing because I'm impacting a lot of people. That's what I kind of meant. And that was a pressure-filled situation by that environment, and the stadium and everyone watching. And what guys do every Sunday and every Saturday is a pressure-filled environment. But it's significant because they've earned the right to kind of walk into that pressure-filled environment.
That's very inspiring. And somebody told me recently when I told them you were going to be on the radio show, they shared with me something that you had said years ago, and it was after, sadly, your father had died. And that was before the 2020 season, right?
Right after 2020 season.
Right after 2020. All right. So, and like Big Ten Media Day was coming up and stuff, and you fulfill obligations, kind of off what you just said in inspiring fashion about pressure and handling it and recognizing the significance thereof. Is that your father told you to always be a hero, correct?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways to take that. But for me, it was like when I was a kid, I looked up to other people, and other people were my hero, right? And in my life, it doesn't matter what you're doing, you can be somebody's hero. You know, and we get confused with influence and impact. We think if we don't have a large following, we don't have influence. That's false. Just because you're not a TikToker or a social media influencer doesn't mean you have influence over the people that, you know, I believe that the Lord has placed you over. But, you know, that's just what it means, is be a hero to whoever I'm around and whoever I have a circle of influence.
Beautifully stated. Tanner Morgan, former quarterback for the Golden Gophers. Gophers and Penn State this weekend. We'll spend the final part of our time with Tanner talking about the actual game this weekend. Another thing that one of many things that was super interesting in looking back at this game and the box score and everything. First possession, man, you guys were backed up to the 10-yard line. So, I mean, it's like you're at home, okay, and they got good players all over the place. KJ Hamler on offense over there and stuff. And you eventually hit Rashad Bateman for a 66-yard touchdown. He goes for 7 and 203, second most single game yards in team history. Tyler Johnson went for 7, 104 and 1. Antoine Winfield Jr. had a couple of interceptions in that game. Yeah. Well, not only are they're all still in the NFL, but I mean, not only were the stars shining like in all over that game, but when you start that way, I mean, the inside the red zone, inside the 20 in this game was so massive.
So huge.
Yeah, but because you're starting inside the negative red zone, and you get out of it, you hit Bateman for the long one, sets the tone. But a couple of the interceptions, maybe both by Winfield, were inside the 10. So like Clifford and Hamler and those cats, it's almost like they were like, yeah, this is tough, and they're good, maybe better than we thought. The crowd's loud, but we're going to get down here and here and here, and we got them. Yeah. We got them. Oh, interception. All right, we got them. Oh, interception. That inside the 20 work offensively and defensively, that was the entire game.
Yeah, it's massive. And I think it comes down to a stat that a lot of people think about is like, what do quarterbacks get judged by? What do you get paid in the NFL? If you're a really good quarterback, you get paid on what you're able to do on third down, red zone, and 2-minute. Yeah. That's where quarterbacks make their money. The best quarterbacks in the world are really efficient in those three areas because it's an entirely different game, different defense, different offensive game plans. And, you know, look at Jordan Howden makes a pick against Sean Clifford, who's with the Packers, throwing to a receiver and a tight end who are both still in the NFL and playing very successfully, right? Playing good ball. And then Antoine Winfield, 2 interceptions on a slot fade and a post, who is one of the best safeties in the NFL, right? And it came down to, yeah, you're right. They were moving the ball, right? But when the moment mattered, Antoine stepped up, Twee stepped up, Jay Howe with the Saints now stepped up. And, you know, for us, we started the game with the touchdown. We were in a backed up territory, which is, you know, the number one goal of when you're in, you know, the -4, -5 is just get a first down, get out of there. Yep. But it came down to, they brought a blitz to tilt that we saw that Kirk Soroka, who was offense coordinator at the time, said, hey, I know exactly what they're doing. Here's the play. We're checking slice, and you're going to throw a touchdown. And in the first drive of the game, it shows up. Micah Parsons was suspended for supposed to be the first quarter, I think. We throw a touchdown. Next drive, he's back in the game. Number 11's back.
Micah Parsons, wow.
And even then, you know, he was playing an off-ball linebacker, you know, solely like Mike and Will. And now he's kind of doing everything with the Cowboys, more of like a rush-in type.
Oh, yeah.
But it was, I mean, getting off topic here, but our protection plan on third down was really easy that game because it was, hey, here's the 4 guys we're blocking, and then block number 11 because he's blitzing every time because he's that good.
Okay, now
down memory lane we go.
I'm glad you said that about Soroka saying that on that individual play because one of the 2 recap stories I read, there was a linebacker, Jan Johnson or something like that, who basically said the same thing. They were really dialed into what we were going to do. Mm-hmm. We would change. They were dialed in again.
Yeah.
And gave the offense a lot of credit for being scholars of the game.
Yeah.
How often does that happen in college football where, you just come into a game and you're like, we got you, even with a gotcha. And then they change, and then you knew the change was coming.
I mean, that's why good coaching is so valuable and so important. When coaches, they spend all week developing a game plan that works and going over every scenario that might happen. If we do this, they're going to do that, and building up, what if scenarios in their head. And that's kind of what happened with Kirk Ciarrocca. And I think that happens, across the country every Saturday and every Sunday, and college football and on Sundays is figuring out what we're going to do. What's our counter to their counter? Yeah. And that's where all these brilliant offensive and defensive minds, get paid a lot of money to be successful in that area.
Tanner Morgan at T_Morg2 via the tweet machine, also has a podcast called the Authentic Walk Podcast, and you can learn about that via his Twitter feed. Couple more here before we say goodbye. The current Golden Gophers. When I was watching games early in the season, specifically North Carolina in the second half, I'm like, we got some tackling problems here. Got some tackling problems back here and all that. And then it got a little better. It's really gotten better the last few. So that's like improving as you move forward. Yeah. And PJ Fleck and the staff have done a good job with getting them squared away on tackling. This Golden Gophers defense is quite good.
Yeah, they have. I think again, like we're mentioning former Gophers who are currently still in the NFL. Same thing that you'll talk about guys on this defense. Cody Lindenberg, Mike linebacker from Anoka, Minnesota, is going to play for a long time in the NFL.
Yeah, his pass drop is really good.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. He's very athletic. He moves well, and he's a phenomenal leader. Like, just fits the mold for what you want in a linebacker. They have Ja Joyner as a rush end, who is extremely long, who's, I think, again, going to be a guy who plays for a long time on Sunday. Justin Wally at corner, who's been a lockdown guy for Minnesota for a number of years now. So they have the talent and the depth, and their coaches are doing a great job continuing to go over those details and make sure you clean up the little things like the tackling so that the scheme and the talent level can shine on a consistent basis.
What do you think of Coy Barrich?
Coy is a dog. I mean, I think we are so lucky that he stayed in Minnesota, and not lucky. It's relationship building that Danny Collins, the safety coach, PJ Fleck, what they did in recruiting him and how intentional they were from the start. Finding him before he blew up. And, this guy turned down Ohio State and the powerhouses of college football to come to play at Minnesota and to see what he's done this year. I mean, against USC and every week as a punt returner. And, they're teasing him maybe getting the ball on offense, right? And being kind of, one of those guys that can do it all.
I thought you were going to say Travis Hunter.
Yeah, I don't want to do comparisons.
I saw him live Family Weekend in Boulder when I went to visit my senior daughter, and I've watched him on TV. I've said this before here. When I watched him, it was unbelievable. When you watch him live and you get the full scope of the field, so like he corrects for those who make mistakes with his athletic ability.
Well, and just how many snaps he's able to play on a weekly basis.
Unbelievable.
101. And so I don't want to compare,
but it's the same.
Elite talent to elite talent. But the fact that he's here and what he's done for the state and the team is awesome. And I'm excited to see him as a Gopher for the next 2 to 3 years.
Is this version of Penn State University, is this team really good? I mean, like where are they good?
I do. I mean, I think when you look at their offense, Andy Kotelnicki is their offensive coordinator, and he has described his offense as a Dairy Queen blizzard. Said it looks very complex, but in reality, it's just candy and vanilla ice cream all mixed up. And that's what they do. Their tight end, Tyler Warren, has been able to, there was a stat, he's played snaps at right guard, center, tight end, tackle, quarterback. So they do the Wildcat stuff with him. They get really complex. They'll play 2 quarterbacks. Their starting quarterback is playing at a high level, Drew Allar. He's very efficient. And so they make things look very complex, but their players know exactly what they're doing. They know their assignments, alignments, and techniques, and they're executing really well.
And lastly, Darius Taylor, the tailback with the natural. Now, I know he used to be a wide receiver, but still catching out of the backfield is an art.
Yes.
And the example I use is Adrian Peterson. I mean, they tried so hard with Adrian to make it natural and fluid, and it was mechanical, and they just couldn't count on it. So even with HOFs, it's not the easiest thing to do.
For sure.
It's so natural with him. I mean, the wheel routes where you get out by the boundary or somewhere down the field and you got the right matchup. He's faster than the linebacker. That's one thing. the angles and like the hard cuts and then cut right middle of the field between the hash marks.
Yeah.
And then catch the bullet. He's just so natural catching the ball.
Yeah. And it allows Greg Harbaugh to be creative and do a bunch of different stuff. Put him out as the number one receiver and throw a bang 8 or a glance route on 3rd and 7 to convert against, I think it was UCLA, and to do a bunch of complex stuff. And their offense is phenomenal. He's doing a great job. He's, it looks very West Coasty, with like the Shanahan and KOC tree of the stuff that they're doing. It's phenomenal. And what you get out of that is a back who can catch the ball out of the backfield. It's high efficient passes that are essentially an extension of the run game. So you're throwing the ball 3 yards, you're getting him another touch that's not necessarily inside of the tackles, but you're getting him one-on-one in space on a corner or safety to go make a play. And it's a phenomenal job of utilizing the talent, and the skill set that Darius Taylor has and what they're doing offensively to get him the ball in different ways. Now,
lastly, there was a time within the last year and a half, you and I chatted, and I thought you were going to become a coach. Like you would, like either full-time here or maybe like ascend that way. And ascend you would. Whether it's quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator, D1, NFL, whatever. I've just seen a lot of them, and you would be one. Why don't you coach?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was there. I was coaching. I was on staff at the University of Minnesota. Had great opportunities that a lot of people would be, young coaches would love and die for. It wasn't what I ultimately felt called to for my family. The exchange, I wasn't willing to make the exchange of becoming an elite coach for what it would do to my family. And for me, that's the most important thing in my life. And if I'm going to say it, I got to do it.
Yeah.
And so God's just really orchestrated a lot of things. Now I still get to coach in the private quarterback space with QB Motion Midwest, and I absolutely love it. I love it.
That's sweet.
So it's, it's personable and flexible, but it's not, the way that I maybe once envisioned it. And I'm very happy with the way that my life is right now, and I love it.
Beautiful. Sometimes you can fill your pockets and empty your soul.
For sure.
Great seeing you.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
Let's stay in touch, okay?
Today.
For sure.
Yep.
Tanner Morgan, lovely guy, one of my very favorites. At T_Morg, the number 2. To learn more about his podcast, The Authentic Walk, the quarterbacking school where he represents that organization for the Upper Midwest and the Midwest in general. And also just to stay in touch with Tanner Morgan. We'll be right back.
News du Nord brought to you by the casino at Canterbury Park, CanterburyPark.com. Poker, blackjack, and table games all year round. Feeling the felt. NFL Pick'em game mañana tomorrow. So check that out, CanterburyPark.com. How about checking out the Minnesota Wild? The Wild had a 2-1 lead against St. Louis last night. Kaprizov with the goal. Then St. Louis ties it up, but it was Jonas Brodin with the go-ahead.
Looking for Toropchenko. The pressure department denied that. Johansson got to the point. Spurgeon over to Brodin. Loads, fires. He scores! Jonas Brodin with a blast. He beats Binnington short side, and the Wild have a 3-2 lead with 6:16 to go.
And with the net empty, Kaprizov scores his second.
Shen on the regroup. Finds Jake Neighbors. Neighbors hounded by Erickson X. Spins it around the Wild end wall. Favor let it come free. Kaprizov tipping it loose. Kaprizov's got an empty net in front of him. He scores! Kirill Kaprizov. A 2-goal game in St. Louis. It's 4-2 Minnesota late in the third.
And that's the final score. Wild, I believe, I saw this from Aaron Sickman last night. I believe their point count through 18 games, it's the most in franchise history. So the team's off to a red-hot start, and they're off continuing on to the road. They are at Edmonton tomorrow, You'll get to hear that tomorrow evening right here on The Fan. And then Saturday, sadly, the Wild game and the Gophers Penn State game match up. So you'll get Gophers on The Fan, Wild on Cool. So actually not sadly at all. Elite channel/station flipping material on your Saturday. They'll come home Monday then to host Winnipeg. So big one ahead for the Wild.
The Johansson, Rossi, Hartman line complimented Kaprizov, Zuccarello, and the gang. And I thought they looked really, really good last night. I haven't had much chance this year because of the Viking schedule to really dive in and hone into the Wild, like take notes during the game and stuff. And after, I mean, they jumped Bus last night. I mean, they were trying to take a 2-0 lead on the Wild in the first 90 seconds. It's not like all the saves were sprawling or of the circus variety, but Bus held up his part of the bargain there, and then all of a sudden things started to take off. And, you know, John Hines, coach of the Minnesota Wild, started the 9 to noon show today at 9 o'clock. And for Wild fans or hockey fans, you can podcast it after the show at KFAN.com, because we got into something I found to be very interesting. He had a quote where after the game where he's like, when Hartsey is moving his feet, these things happen. Well, I asked the question, okay, well, when he or somebody is not moving their feet during games, like what leads to that? Why? I thought his answer was fascinating. So you can listen to that 9 to noon on demand, KFAN.com. And now it's on to Edmonton. Interestingly for Edmonton, they beat Ottawa last night. McDavid had a couple of goals. Evan Bouchard started the scoring. They just finished a 3-game road trip. Now, last time they had an elongated road trip that was like a week or more. Earlier this season, they played 4 consecutive on the road. They came back and they got shut out in their first home game. I've noticed, especially in hockey, when they have these long road trips and they come home, that first game is so tough. So hopefully the Wild can take advantage of that tomorrow evening.
How about the Hoop Squad, as in the Gophers? And thanks again to Tanner Morgan for coming in studio. Awesome dude. And it was cool sharing memories of 2019 and looking forward to Saturday with the football team. Meanwhile, Parker Fox handling business for Ben Johnson's squad.
2:40 to go in the half. Fox with it out front. Fakes a handoff, takes it right to the rim, and wow, what a dunk. Oh, brother. He came from about 12 feet out and threw it down with 2 hands. Without any doubt, he put it in.
And later in the first half, seconds dwindling down, they're trailing Cleveland State at the barn.
Rigsby throws into Fox. He'll throw up a 30-footer at the buzzer. And hit it! Parker Fox knocked it down. And Minnesota will go into the locker room leading by 2.
I saw some joking on social media as people were scrambling to figure out when the last time Parker Fox hit or maybe even took a three-pointer. But he hits the buzzer beater. It's 31-29 at the break. The Gophers, this is kind of their vibe, is they've struggled in first halves against teams, and then they end up running them down at the finish line. They win 58-47 in a much more lopsided second half than the first was. But Parker Fox, off the bench, led all scorers on the Gophers side of things, 7 of 11. Missed a couple of free throws. We're going to have to talk to him about that. That's kind of an L. But a couple of boards, a couple dimes, a couple steals. And as I mentioned, a game where they were struggling in the first half, pulled away in the second. I don't know how good this team is, but they improved to 4-1. And Central Michigan next Monday. So congrats to Parker.
I felt so good for the weekly guest, 9 to noon, Parker Fox. When I've seen him dunk in games. When he hit that 30-footer before halftime and the way he ran off the court, you could tell he was super excited. Teammates mugging you and everything. And like I put on Twitter last night, is when the Vox is in hurried fashion going through your lifetime game logs, like back to the NSIC to see what your all-time scoring high is.
Yeah, was it Northern State or something he played at prior?
That's what it was. Thank you. NSIC, I think, was the conference. Northern State was the team. And
look what he did. 2020, it was a COVID year. Did it really exist? 2021.
Right. So Parker was terrific last night. Likewise for the team. Ben Johnson's interview after the game on a Big Ten network I thought was really, really cool. Where there was a lot of sharing of the credit of who handled what situation well in bigger situations.
Yeah.
And I'm watching more Golden Gophers basketball this year than I have in quite some time because we've gotten to know Parker Fox. And he's an easy guy to pull for. It's an easy team for which to pull. And I wish them nothing but the best.
Last thing for you here. I just saw this story pop up, and Eli Manning, part of the 25 modern era player semifinalists for the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2025. So I look at the list, and I'm thinking, Eli, a couple of Super Bowls. I mean, as good as it got in the playoffs, beats a 17-0 team type of thing. I'm cool with Eli getting in, but I'm looking at the rest of the list. Okay, Jared Allen. I'd like to see him wear a gold jacket someday. And Terrell Suggs. I mean, those defenses in Baltimore, unfreaking believable. And I'm looking at this list, and I see Earl Thomas on the list, PA. And that piqued my interest during last break because we were talking about Harrison Smith and kind of the quiet yet unbelievable career that he's had in the NFL for the Vikings. So I'm looking at Earl Thomas. I think Earl Thomas ultimately, as he was named All-Pro 3 times, he won a Super Bowl with the Seahawks, and he was kind of that all-2010s HOF team. I mean, Earl Thomas had a very highly praised and high accolade-laden career. But I look at it. So it
didn't finish well for him.
Well, no, it went weird. He's flipping off people.
Right.
He got injured.
Well, that matters.
Begging to go to the Cowboys and all of that.
That matters because of the media and what they hear and what they see and stuff like that.
Yeah, so he played in 140 games over 10 seasons. Harrison's played in $186. He's got 30 interceptions to Harry's 36. He's got 713 combined tackles. This is Pro Football Reference. Nearly 1,100 for the Hitman. He has 2 career sacks, Earl Thomas does, to 20.5 for Harrison Smith. And Earl Thomas has 13 TFLs. Harrison Smith has 47. Earl Thomas has 11 career hits on the QB. Harrison has 43. I mean, my point just goes on, and getting back to Andrew Van Ginkel, whether he's 20,200, 5-1, whatever it is, that there's a name recognition element here.
Yeah.
Harrison Smith's career is so much more impressive and impactful to Vikings defenses than Earl Thomas's. But he has more All-Pros. He has the Super Bowl ring, and he was part of that All-2010 team.
Yeah.
Whereas Harrison Smith just has the 1 All-Pro. Oh, by the way, the 4 defensive touchdowns, the pick sixes, Earl Thomas just had 2. Harry had 4. And so you go into that, and it's like across the board, Harrison Smith, the better safety. And I just hope, I don't know what Earl Thomas's future is. He had a great career. It's not about indicting Earl Thomas.
I know what you mean.
But the Hitman deserves respect.
No, I think it's a great example because Earl Thomas is a big name that resonates through at least a couple of generations.
And he played at the same time as Harrison, too.
Earl Thomas couldn't cover the pass as well as Harrison Smith if he had like a motorcycle to ride around the field and find all these receivers. Earl Thomas, quality player, good overall player. Harrison Smith, great overall player. Earl Thomas, great, elite, high-end, downhill safety, diagnosing what's going to happen within 5, 6, 7, 8 yards from the line of scrimmage. He also, he also had Cam Chancellor by his side.
Ooh.
And that made up half of the Legion of Boom. Now, that really is the last time we had a super cool nickname in the National Football League, Legion of Boom. Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, and it was the other.
Man, they had Cliff Averill, they had Michael Bennett.
Well, I'm talking about the secondary. They called it the Legion of Boom.
Brandon Browner was in that mix.
He was in there.
They had a couple of different corners.
Yep, Deshaun Shedd was the one that jumps to mind for me. But
that defense was awesome.
Yeah, I'm not diminishing in the beginning, with whom Harrison played, the types of defenses on which he played, how they played. But Harrison didn't. When you have Cam Chancellor, who was dynamite, when you have Cam Chancellor as your bookending safety, like Earl did a majority of his career, well, then different things are going to happen in the passing game that are going to benefit the other safety. And Harrison is flourishing now because Josh Metellus, Cam Bynum, Brian Flores, Blake Cashman, Van Ginkel, everything around him, it's so cohesive that he's really, really reinventing a niche that has taken place during a career where he has had to reinvent himself.
Jamarcus Sanford, 2012.
Right. Yeah. I couldn't remember names. I almost said Madu Williams, but that was before that. But what he has now is I'm not going to make a prediction on this, but I'm not saying this is Harrison Smith's last year. So the Hall of Fame, unless he said something about, this is my last year, start, writing the moratorium or whatever, he hasn't. I don't think this has to be Harrison's last year. He works for team-friendly deals. He loves everything about the culture in the building and the spirit in the building. And like a drive-by I had after the Jacksonville game, these kids reinvigorate him. He's reinvigorated by all this youthful energy in that locker room. Now, Stephon Gilmore, Shaq Griffin, Byron Murphy, they're veterans.
Yeah.
And Metellus and Bynum, they've now played, X amount of years, but it's still a very youthful feel Harrison's also on the older side, comparatively speaking.
But he's still playing every single snap,
yeah.
And unless I've missed something, I can't remember a ton of old man gaffes that have taken place through 10 games.
Excellent point, because, and in fact, let's just dagger it with that. You don't play every play in every game and don't make glaring mistakes where it's clear, wow, look at that. There he is. He's trailing the guy by 5 yards because he's so old, he's slow.
For a defensive coordinator that would not hesitate to take a guy off,
amen,
if he can't do better behind him, right?
I don't see why Harrison wouldn't play another year. I'm just going to leave it like that.
I'll take it.
I'm just going to flip it. I'm not even going to think about it. I expect him to play next year.
Oh, I like that.
Because he enjoys it. He's good. His children are still very, very young. So, yeah, he's one of my all-time favorite people to be around. Having the privilege to do the job I do with that team. He's Captain Cool. He's HOF. He's HOF not only on the field, off the field, as a teammate. You hear Kevin O'Connell talk about him. Kevin's been around Randy Moss, Tom Brady, Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald. And the things Kevin says about Harrison Smith are just glowing. And it's not effusive praise. It's worthy, and it's due. And he's a bastion of excellence. So I hope he plays again next year. That's News du Nord, provided by Canterbury Park and CanterburyPark.com. We have some Soldier Field Skull stories we'd like to share around the corner. Thank you for listening to FM 100.3 KFAN.